Welcome to episode 3 of Zero Trust Bytes, the podcast where we explain the world of zero trust security and its applications in today's digital landscape. I'm your host, Miguel Villarreal, and today we have an exciting topic to discuss: implementing an organizational multi-factor authentication and identity provider solutions with Microsoft Entra, Yubico, and KeyFactor.
That's right.
All right. So to help us dive into this topic, everyone, we have with us today the one, the only, also known as Kamel Kolodeske, a zero trust expert with extensive experience in implementing MFA solutions. And I can back it up because he works for us here at Villatech. Welcome, Camille.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you. It's so good to be here. I'm glad to be here for yet another episode of Zero Trust Bytes.
Bytes.
Yes, episode 3. So we have a major topic today to discuss: multi-factor authentication, and actually phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication with Yubico, using Microsoft Entra ID as the identity provider. And we have KeyFactor as the public key infrastructure solution that we will use for the certificate-based access on our devices.
Wow, that's exciting.
That's what I'm saying. I'm seeing 3 different solutions for episode 3.
There you go. And that's a lot to unpack.
That's right.
So I'm excited to hear more about this, Kamel. Viewers, I hope you're excited. Podcast listeners, I hope you're excited because we got a podcast that's off the ground. Right, John?
That's right.
John is like the most exciting person in the world. We love him. But before we get into the nitty-gritty details, let's give a shout out to our giveaway audience.
Come on now.
So let's talk about that coin. You guys ready to make some coin?
I don't think they're still not ready. I don't know.
I don't see anyone making comments. They're not asking for the coin. You guys don't want this. I get it. It's when we have 3,000 views,
right?
Then they're gonna ask for
then
the coin.
Then it'll be a rare item.
It's too late now. It'll be too late then, right?
Yeah, it'll be all gone.
Hey, you guys, you'll be begging and asking for it, but until then, hey, you know what? I think the idea of icing it out, putting it on a chain, when they see that, then the hip hop audience will be like, "What? Zero Trust Bytes? We gotta join
Put
that."
Put some ice on that, baby. And of course, we have the wonderful wallet as well. This is a hide item as well. Really like the dual feature opening here. Man, that is great.
Yeah,
nice.
It's real leather. I think I may be Coach.
Coach? Oh.
Yeah, right. I don't think so.
All right. I should grab a couple more from me.
All right, great. Let's start discussing this important topic about multi-factor authentication in an organization. There's a lot of people that are saying, "Oh man, this is boring. MFA, everybody knows about multi-factor authentication."
Sure.
Last I read, there was an organization that didn't have MFA enabled or multi-factor authentication enabled.
Oh man.
And they got hacked. So it's something that we got to continue to nail in the cybersecurity industry. It's something that we got to continue to push.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to work really hard to keep the eye on the audience as well, right? So I know there's camera one that I need to be looking at, but I'll do my best to remember. But we are talking to each other too. So
yeah, absolutely.
I got to remember that Kamel's in the house. So what do you think, Kamel?
About multi-factor authentication?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal, right? It's probably one of the simplest things that you can enable, and yet somehow is the biggest one that's missed.
Mm-hmm.
So multi-factor authentication adds an extra layer of security by requiring users to provide multiple forms of identification before allowing access to your sensitive information. This significantly reduces the risk of unauthorized access, even if a password is compromised. So just remember that. We all know that everyone's got a username, a password to log into your account, whatever that may be. But adding an extra layer just reduces the risk of your account being compromised. So by combining something the user knows, like a password, and then something they have, like a Yubico key or a FIDO2 key or a universal second factor, That's something that they have. And then something that they are. That, I think, is kind of a missed layer there, because they're like, what do you mean? What do you mean something that you have? Well, think about like biometric. Your eye, your fingerprint, a hand gesture. That's something that you are. That's unique to you as a person.
Good, yeah.
So it's very hard to mimic that unless, we do some kind of crazy Mission Impossible stuff where,
Yeah.
we get your fingerprint or something like that. That's some next level stuff. But yeah, so those MFA measures only increase your ability to reduce the risk of unauthorized access for critical resources.
Yeah, that's a great real-world example. You want to have multiple layers. We talked about last episode of having these multiple layers of micro firewalls where the firewall functionality was moving out closer to the resources, right?
Yeah.
That's a great example, Kamel, of talking about phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication, right?
Right.
So you're not just having the challenge where it's a password. You're not also having a challenge where it is a PIN. You also now have some type of, resource that you carry. Some, or you talked about like a fingerprint or an iris scan or something like that. And that was something that we heard in Mission Impossible. Now in corporate America, or large enterprises, or enterprises that actually want to implement high-level security, biometric is one of the main things that you need to start to incorporate.
Yep.
And as technology is miniaturizing, we can do a lot of that in little fobs, or we have laptops that actually have cameras for a reason.
Yeah.
And they're not only just to be blocked, right?
Right.
Right. So sometimes we need to unblock that camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Use it for the right time, you know.
Let's look at that pretty face.
Pretty. Okay. So, Kamel, walk me through a little bit on how does it enhance the security of multi-factor authentication, the whole phishing resistant multi-factor authentication, because phishing resistant doesn't mean about fishes, and it's not talking about you resisting fishes, but phishing.
Yes.
The art of hacking.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So phishing resistant MFA is designed to protect against phishing attacks. As you said, it's not about phishing or anything like that. It's trying to inhibit the unauthorized access. So yes, we have the passwords or traditional styles of accessing your resources, but how do we add that extra layer? And it's by, with either multi-factor authentication authenticator app like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator, or take it to the next level and add yet another extra layer, which now we're at 2 layers, a key, a hardware token, an OTP, which is one-time password token.
Okay.
Those types of layers are just increasingly making it harder for an attacker to attack your resource.
Yes.
So, phishing-resistant MFA additional security measures are implemented to verify the authenticity of the login process. This can include techniques such as push notifications, biometric authentications, which we already mentioned, fingerprint, your retina scan, Windows Hello, which is your facial feature, or a hardware token. Yeah, the big smile. Well, it depends on how it captured your face the first time, right? You don't want to be wearing sunglasses because then it won't recognize you. But then there's also biometric, which you already mentioned. And then this, of course, makes it much more difficult for attackers to impersonate legitimate users.
Excellent, Kamel. Excellent. Great analogy of breaking down phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. Now let's focus on Microsoft Entra ID and the identity provider. And then you're hearing, we talked about PDP. This is IDP.
Oh,
you know me. IDP. Yeah, you know me.
PDP.
Okay, so that's that. So IDP basically is the identity provider that Microsoft Entra has. Can you explain to the viewers and to us today?
Certainly.
What is IDP, and how does Microsoft Entra fit into the multi-factor authentication landscape, so the audience can hear a little bit more about that?
Certainly, absolutely. So first of all, as you may have known, and for some that you don't know, Entra ID is actually the new name for what used to be Azure Active Directory. Now it's called Microsoft Entra ID. So just want to clear that up because I think there's still some confusion as I have Active Directory. What are you guys talking about Entra ID? They just went through a name change. So I just want to clear that up for the audience members out there. And if you know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Yeah, you're not belittling them,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
this is for the ones that don't.
Yeah.
That don't know.
Exactly. So Microsoft Entra ID is an identity provider service that manages and verifies user identities and authentication purposes. It's a robust IDP identity provider solution that integrates seamlessly with Microsoft's suite of products and services. It provides a secure and user-friendly platform for implementing multi-factor authentication, allowing organizations to leverage Microsoft's extensive security features and authentication methods.
Okay. So that's really good, Camille, that you kind of broke that down. But there's a little bit more I think you have going on here. Walk us through a little bit about PKI.
Yeah, PKI, so public key infrastructure. We just went through a pretty extensive testing in the lab for PKI with KeyFactor, and it's taken that authentication of multi-factor authentication to yet the next level.
Okay.
So you want to think about not so good being the username and password. That's very, very weak. What's the next step? Oh, maybe there's good, right? So good is you have password, user credentials, and a multi-factor authentication push notification. Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. Great. What's the next thing? Well, we have what's maybe better. That's probably doing a hardware token, FIDO2, Yubico key, something we're going to show today as well.
Okay.
But how can we get to the best solution, the highest security solution?
Okay.
And that's certificate-based authentication. That's where a public key infrastructure, PKI with KeyFactor, comes into play because managing certificates is very difficult. So you want to be able to manage those certificates and scale at large by incorporating certificate authority into your keys.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we're gonna show a demo of this, aren't we?
Yeah. We do have a great demo. I'm going to be walking through an example of a user authenticating to accessing an Azure portal, where we'll have to have our passwordless deployment using a certificate-based authentication, Yubico key, and I'll walk you through how Structura can help automate all those configurations.
Right, because we have massive deployments of this and certificate-based server or CAs out there that you have to do this for thousands of users. The goal here is automation and orchestrating that, right?
Yes.
So our goal is to turn that into code. And we're calling policy as code, right? Or
yes.
Security as code. So our goal is to take all of these different functions and all of these different behaviors that we're learning, and rather than clicking here and clicking there, we're trying to market this to a large-scale audience where they have large environments and they need to do this more in an automated format. So that's where Structura does come in.
Yes.
And Structura will take a lot of these functionalities that you actually have that you can do pointing and clicking or REST API or some kind of Python script or something. But we're trying to do this in a single pane of glass, right?
Yes.
And we're trying to give them visuals on how they do that. So, Kamel, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go to the demo, and I'll show you guys how we do this in our demonstration. Welcome to another demonstration on the Zero Trust Bytes podcast. In this demo, we'll be going through organizational identity provider with Microsoft Entra ID and having users created, but using those users to authenticate by a couple of different authentication methods and being enforced by a conditional access policy that we'll get into in a little bit in more detail. What also we'll be showing is the creation of a certificate in the KeyFactor portal and how we leverage that certificate to be used by the users with an attribute, what's called the subject key identifier, or SKI. And also we'll have another authentication method where it'll be a combination of some of the users using the certificate-based authentication and a FIDO2 security key, which is Yubico YubiKey, which is part of the FIDO Alliance. And the other method will be using a certificate-based authentication and the Microsoft Authenticator app with passwordless phone sign-in. So let's get started here. The first thing that I want to show is a creation of a certificate in the KeyFactor dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and go to this dashboard here just to show what our current list of certificates are. I'm going to refresh this page just to show that the current state shows this list of certificates. And let's go ahead and expand this column here and just show these are the latest certs that we have. And then why don't we duplicate a certificate just to show that we can create a couple new certificates and just give it a unique name. Okay, save that, make sure it's ready to go. And then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the newest one that I just created. Also give it a different name, just so that it is unique to us. Make sure that saves correctly, and we're ready to go. So why don't we go ahead and run the plan to make sure that the workspace captures all the changes that we are going to do. And as you can see here, once it goes through that our plan has 2 resources to add. So I'm going to go ahead and apply those changes to add the 2 new created certificates that we created here in the workspace for Structura, which, by the way, Structura is a tool that we use here at Villatech to for a lot of our automation orchestration needs to help build a lot of these components. So now that that's been completed, let's go back to KeyFactor and show whether those 2 certificates have been created. So the page has been refreshed. Let's expand this to confirm, yes, that we have our 2 certificates, one for user 4 and one for user 5, which is great. Now, the other portion of the demo is how can we leverage using those certificates for our authentication methods and for those users to be enforced to use those authentication methods by the conditional access policy. So just to show an example, we already have one user that's being applied to the conditional access policy, plus having a group membership to the 2 different group members, which in this case, it'll have a group membership for the FIDO security key and the certificate-based authentication. And just to quickly show that in the Azure portal, we'll go to our 2MFA1 user, go to our groups, and we see that it is associated to those 2 groups. And then we have our MFA policy. You can see that we have 2 users, which is actually correct because the other use case that we'll show is how do we add a user that is already associated to a conditional access policy but associated to a different set of group members. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's just make sure that user 1 is actually being enforced correctly. So if I go to my login page here and try to access this user, okay, it's asking me for the certificate, which is one of the methods for authentication. And then the second method is the Yubico security key. So I'm going to go ahead and click that option, put in my PIN, and then touch the Yubico key to make sure that it is being used correctly, and then go ahead and not stay signed in, but to confirm that those 2 methods are in fact being used to authenticate in a multi-factor fashion by using a certificate-based authentication and the FIDO security key. So let me go ahead and sign out of this and show you the next use case example. I'm going to have to revoke the certificate so it doesn't stay on this browser. Okay. Now the second use case that we have is a user that's going to just use a simple password. It's not a part of the policy. It's not part of any groups. So let's just confirm that that is the case, which I'll log in now. Okay. And we'll use the password. And there you go. Very simple. It's something that we're very used to on how to access dashboards, but this is the weakest method. We don't want to have just a password to log into a portal, especially your highly sensitive data or your different dashboards or your different methods of working with different applications. So we got to lock this down. So I'm going to sign out of this user, and we'll go back to Structura to change the method of authenticating with this user. Make sure that there's no certificates, which we know there isn't. But I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to go ahead and change this for the second user. So what I'll do is I'm going to select a couple of these resources here and add this to a conversation in which I will ask our assistant, can you add to MFA to user to the conditional access policy user list, and also create group member resources to the to Azure AD underscore groups. So I'm having the assistant chatting with it, asking it to add it to an existing resource, and then creating two resources so it can match what the first user is doing, which is the FIDO key and the certificate-based authentication for the two authentication methods. So in order to do that, let's just check that is correct. So it's going to create a resource, correct. We do want it to go to the FIDO MFA group, and then also to the CERT group as the two new group memberships, and then update an existing resource that we already have. So let's go ahead and click that and confirm that is correct. You can see our second user now has an association to the conditional access policy, and then we'll just drag these over here to visually see it better. But you can see that we now have group memberships just like it has above, one for the FIDO key and the second for the CERT. I'm going to save this now since we made a couple of changes here, and then we'll go ahead and run the plan. So because of those changes, we should be seeing two new resources to add and one to change. Looks like we're good to go. Let's confirm that. It's going to apply it. It's going to make the changes. One, to modify an existing resource by adding that user to the list in the conditional access policy, and then creating two new resources, which is essentially just giving that user two groups, one for the FIDO MFA group and one for the CERT MFA group. So it looks like that just got completed. Let's go to our Azure dashboard, and I'm going to click refresh here to make sure that we should be seeing 3 users now, not just 2. And let's click on our specific users list, and we do see our 3 users now, which is great. And then if I go to our second user here, which didn't have any groups associated to it, now it does have the CERT MFA group and the FIDO MFA group, which is exactly what we wanted. Now let's go ahead and test that that is actually correct. So before we did the password option, which is the weakest option. Now we want to give it the not best or good, but the highest, the most best option. A good option is to have password and some sort of MFA, but we're doing password lists and 2 factors, which is the highest level that Microsoft considers in their authentication methods. So I'm going to use the smart card this time, or the certificate I should say, and then we'll do the second user. And now it's prompting me to use a FIDO key external key, which is exactly what we wanted. Great. Now what our user was before getting into there with just a password now has the policy associated to it, which the authentication methods that are being used is a certificate and the FIDO key. So I'm going to sign out of this, and we'll go into the last use case, which we're not going to use a FIDO key this time. We'll actually use the Microsoft Authenticator app. So I'm going to reset the certificate because we're not going to be using that anymore. I'll minimize this view. And if we go to our workspace here, you can see that we have this user, which is associated to the policy already, but I want this user to have the group memberships for Cert MFA and the Microsoft MFA group. So let's do something similar where we can put this into a conversation. And ask it, can you create group member resources to the two Azure AD groups? Okay. So let's see what our list shows here. It is creating two resources, and that's exactly what I want for that user. Just drag it over here so we can see it a little bit better, and then that's good. Now this user is already part of the policy, but what two authentication methods are we going to use? Because in this case we're not using the FIDO group, we're actually using the Microsoft Authenticator group. It'll be using a different method. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then we'll run the plan. Okay, so we should have only two resources to add, and then I'll go ahead and confirm that. Cool, so that was a lot quicker. We'll go to our dashboard here, and let's just take a look and confirm that is the case, which, as you can see in the groups here, we have the Cert MFA group standard, but now we have the Microsoft MFA group, which is exactly what we wanted. So let's go ahead and confirm that by trying to log in with that user. Okay, so here's our certificate. Perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. Now I'm getting a notification on my phone that I have to put in that code and use the biometric fingerprint, because that's what I configured on my phone for passwordless phone sign-in. And as you can see, I am able to log into the Azure portal now because of the conditional access policy that's configured for the user, but using a different combination of the authentication methods. So I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Thank you for watching.
Kamel, that was a great demo again. Let's discuss the benefits of and challenges of implementing multi-factor authentication with Microsoft Entra ID.
Yeah, absolutely. So the benefits, of course, of implementing multi-factor authentication with Microsoft Entra ID are numerous. Tons of definitely benefits with using an identity provider that's very well known, like Microsoft Entra ID, and a multi-factor authentication such as Yubico. Firstly, it provides a seamless integration with Microsoft's ecosystem, okay, making it easier for organizations already using Microsoft products to adopt multi-factor authentication. Secondly, Microsoft Entra ID offers a wide range of authentication methods, which we've gone through a couple of those examples already, which include push notifications, biometrics, and hardware tokens, and it gives organizations the flexibility to choose the most suitable option for their users. Because let's just remember, not every organization is the same.
No.
Maybe they won't allow an authenticator, right? Maybe they won't allow some kind of hardware token.
Right.
We're going to have something different. It's unique to their organization, their use case. So, however, there are numerous benefits. There are challenges that may arise during the initial setup, okay, and user onboarding process, which I've seen in a lot of organizations.
Okay.
As organizations need to ensure smooth transition and provide adequate training and support their employees during that process. It takes a lot of time to train your employees. It takes a lot of time for them to go through that process.
Right.
So it's like, guys, how can we mitigate that? And it's a very easy solution: conditional-based access.
Conditional-based access.
Right? We can implement policies that enforce users to build that multi-factor authentication configuration from the get-go,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're not going to be able to log in to wherever you're trying to log in.
Mm-hmm.
I'll create a user for you for the first time, the initial login setup.
Yeah.
You're going to try to log in. You're like, oh, great, I finally got hired by this company. Let's do it. I can log in. No. It'll tell you, stop right there. You need to set up an authenticator so you can have at least one form of multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, so I would say that a lot of benefits incorporate multi-factor authentication, but also when you face challenges, remember there are ways to go about it. It's not just this is going to be a very big challenge for us for our organization if we have, say, 10,000, 50,000 users. And just remember that automation is available. It's there to help you out.
Exactly. That's really good. Amazing. Kamel, thank you for joining us today, our podcast video users. Thank you for our podcast listeners. Thank you for our Patreons. No, we don't have any. Not yet. I'm just going all. I'm acting like we got thousands of people, and we're gonna have the YouTube video with the silver plaque. It's all gonna be there.
That's
you guys
right.
will get to see it.
Yeah.
We're gonna be hot, but until then, I'm faking it right now. But thank you to our listeners. Thank you for listening to this episode. As you heard, stay tuned for exciting discussions that Kamel and I and other viewers, other guests that we're going to have coming on board. But right now, I think, we got 152 activities that we're trying to demonstrate to show the world and the government agency that we can automate, orchestrate, and make life easy for them so they don't have to look for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of engineers.
Yeah.
The other part is artificial intelligence. I think we need to make sure that we do, I know that's not one of the activities. They do talk about artificial intelligence in the activities, but not at target level. That's more at
advanced level.
Advanced?
Yeah.
Is where they start. I want to make sure that we put something in there really nice with automation where they start using artificial intelligence and natural language processing.
This sounds like a challenge.
I think so. I know that we don't have it in our activities, but I want them to see something.
Okay.
We're going to automate this. So, Kamel, thank you for the demo. Thank you for everything that we're doing here. Thank you for our team, John, Jose, Jocelyn. Thank you for everything you guys are doing to keep this going. We still got a whole bunch more. And what do you want to tell the viewers as your closing remarks?
Yeah, so, before we wrap up, I do have some final thoughts and recommendations for our listeners. Implementing MFA, of course, is a crucial step towards enhancing the security posture of any organization. It's important to choose a robust identity provider like Microsoft Entra ID and educate employees about the importance of multi-factor authentication and how to recognize and avoid phishing attacks. I think that's very important because you can implement all these policies, all these strategies, but what does any of that matter if you don't even know what the heck is going on? We're in this tech field. We're in this industry. We understand the technology behind that's going on.
Right.
But what if you have somebody from marketing or from sales who has absolutely no idea what the heck we're even talking about?
Right.
But we need to secure them. We need to make sure that they're secure as well.
Yeah.
Security awareness training is a very important thing.
Really good.
Yep. So in addition to that, regularly reviewing and updating multi-factor authentication policies and configurations is also essential to stay ahead of evolving threats because I think both agree that something that's today that we think it's secure is not going to be secure tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of in a spot where we're always trying to play catch up with our attackers, which is unfortunate, but I think we'll get to a spot where we'll eventually become better than them.
Yeah, that's our prayer.
Yeah.
Our prayer. But I think it's also a mindset. So the mindset basically is zero trust.
Yeah.
We're never secure. We're always challenging, questioning, protect the resource at all costs.
Yep.
That's the oil, that's the gold, that's the diamond, whatever you want to call it. But always that's where artificial intelligence is going to play a really big part.
I think so.
I think humans, there's just so much that we can do. And I don't think that the energy level, I don't think the capability of us constantly looking. I mean, we need to take subject matter experts' minds and we need to put it into the models.
Yeah.
A large language model that's specifically for SOC.
Yeah.
We need large language models that are specifically for red team, for a blue team, for purple team. And I mean, this is great. Microsoft and Google and AWS, I gave you a great idea. Make sure if you guys go with this, our viewers will let us know that you guys launched one of our ideas, and I will send you an invoice. I always say PO. We need an invoice. We want an invoice. So I think what's going to happen is you're going to see these models, but are going to be derived and controlled and initiated and implemented by artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is going to actually do the job, do the work, and the humans are just going to be there for verification and maybe final gate of control, right? Where the change control, they're the ones that are approving or disapproving. We don't want machines making decisions on their own.
Sure.
Humans need to be involved in that entire workflow. But that's what I see coming.
Yeah, still be the policy administrator in that policy decision point, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
yeah. But a human is a human, right?
Yeah. We still need a change advisory board, right? Just to make sure that what is that machine doing? What are they changing over there?
They're talking to themselves. They built another language. It's not called SQL. It's not called KQL. It's called JQL. What the heck is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. They're talking to each other.
And now we're locked out.
Security.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay.
But very valid point, because that's something that in the generative AI world that I'm seeing a lot is being able to teach and learn and train using data sets, right? So if you can do a custom set of data sets to teach something about, right, on a specific task, I think your outcome will be much more concise and defined and able to get the outcome that you want.
Good. Let's wrap this up, Kamel. Thank you for everything. Thank you, viewers, for joining once again. Kamel, you got any last words?
Yes, I do. Remember, in the world of cybersecurity, trust no one and embrace zero trust. Until next time, stay secure.
Stay secure. Zero trust.